Welcome to East Turkestan TV News. East Turkistanis praised French National Assembly for recognizing Uyghur genocide, urges French government to follow suit and boycott the Beijing 2022 Olympics. East Turkestan Government-in-Exile news. France's National Assembly voted on Thursday and passed a motion recognizing China's atrocities against Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples in East Turkestan as crime against humanity, as a genocide ahead of the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics, also known as the Genocide Games. The resolution was proposed by the Socialists in the lower house of the French Parliament and backed by President Emmanuel Macron's ruling Republic on the Move party. It was passed with 169 votes in favor against 1. The East Turkestan Government-in-Exile praises the French people and their National Assembly for recognizing the Chinese government's atrocities against Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples in East Turkestan as genocide and crimes against humanity. The France's National Assembly became the 9th parliament across the globe to declare Chinese atrocity in East Turkestan as genocide. We thank the French National Assembly for recognizing China's ongoing genocide against Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples in occupied East Turkestan, said Prime Minister Salih Khudair of the East Turkestan Government-in-Exile. We urge French government to recognize the genocide as well as fully boycott the Beijing 2022 Olympic, he added. The East Turkestan Government-in-Exile is calling on all governments and parliaments to take meaningful actions to bring an end to this ongoing humanitarian crisis by boycotting the Beijing 2022 Olympics, granting refuge to Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples fleeing genocide, as well as supporting East Turkestan's case against China at International Criminal Court. We ask French government to respect the will of French people and recognize China's genocide against Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples in East Turkestan as well, said Deputy Prime Minister Mirkader Murzat of the East Turkestan Government-in-Exile and Vice President of the French Uyghur Association. We also urge France to support East Turkestan's case at the International Criminal Court and to fully boycott the Beijing Olympics, he added. We thank France's National Assembly for officially recognizing China's atrocity against Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples in occupied East Turkestan as genocide. We also call on French President Macron and French Diplo to recognize the genocide as well. Billionaire investor Thomas Palipiti says nobody cares about Uyghur genocide in China. CNBC News. Billionaire investor Thomas Palipiti triggered a backlash on social media after saying during the recent episode of his podcast that nobody cares about ongoing human rights abuses against the Uyghurs in East Turkestan. During a 90-minute episode, Palipiti told co-host Jason Calacanis on their All In podcast that he would be lying if he said that he cared about the Uyghurs in East Turkestan, so-called Xinjiang. Every time I say that I care about Uyghurs, I'm really just lying if I don't really care. And so I'd rather not to lie to you and tell you the truth. It's not a priority for me, said Palipiti, a venture capitalist who reports say owns as much as 10% of the NBA team, the Golden State Warriors. However, an NBA source familiar says Palipiti owns around 2%. Palipiti did not immediately respond to CNBC's request for comment on his investment discrepancy. The team wrote in a statement on Twitter Monday that Palipiti does not speak on behalf of our franchise, and his views certainly don't reflect those of our organization. The Golden State Warriors statement didn't mention the Uyghurs or China. Calacanis and Palipiti began talking about the Uyghurs when Calacanis praised President Joe Biden's foreign policy approach to China. The Biden administration has described the abuse of Uyghurs in East Turkestan as widespread, state-sponsored forced labor and mass detention. The Biden administration has also warned businesses with supply chain and investment ties to East Turkestan that they could face legal consequences. In July, that warning manifested as a joint advisory from the Departments of State, Treasury, Commerce, Homeland Security, and Labor, along with the Office of U.S. State Representative. The most pointed line from East Turkestan, or so-called Xinjiang Supply Chain Business Advisory, states that businesses and individuals that do not exist supply chains, ventures, and/or investments connected to East Turkestan could run a high risk of violating United States law. The Chinese government has previously denied any wrongdoing or human rights abuses in East Turkestan. About 50 minutes into the podcast, Calicans pointed to the Biden administration's steps to curb and address China's sweeping human rights abuses when the following conversation ensued.
Nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs, okay? You bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard...
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth, okay? Of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line.
Of all the things that I care...
Palihapitiya went to say that he cared about supply chain issues, climate change, America's crippled healthcare system, as well as the potential economic fallout of Chinese invasion of Taiwan. He later clarified his remarks in Monday evening tweet, saying he recognizes that he came across as lacking empathy. As a refugee, my family fled a country with its own set of human rights issues, so this is something that's very much a part of my lived experience, said Palihapitiya, who was born in Sri Lanka. To be clear, my belief is that human rights matter, whether in China, the United States, or elsewhere. Full stop. Last month, the White House announced a diplomatic boycott of 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing, citing ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity in East Turkestan and other human rights abuses. Governments, civil society groups, and United Nations officials have previously expressed concern over Beijing's harsh measures of repressing those who criticize the Chinese Communist Party. But Khudayar, who founded the East Turkestan Awakening movement and serves as the elected Prime Minister for the East Turkestan Government-in-Exile group, said this observation is in no way comparable to what's essentially a 21st century Holocaust-like genocide. Ilteber from East Turkestan TV News reported.